Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Three Questions. I'm Zach Spicer. I'm the head of New College and a associate professor in the School of Public Policy and Administration. And we are joined today by Anthony Piscitelli, who is from Conestoga College. And today we are exploring the topic of what it's like to work in the college sector. So for any PhD students out there who are thinking about teaching and conducting research outside of a university setting, we have a really interesting conversation here for you today. Anthony, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, Zach.
No problem. I wonder if you could give us a quick overview of how you ended up working at Conestoga College.
Sure. So I started out my career working in the nonprofit sector in government. And then one year, my boss had often taught a class at Conestoga College. And one year she couldn't do it. So they came to me and said, would you like to teach this one class? Friday night class, 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock, probably the worst time slot they had. And I just had a blast doing it. So about towards the end of that semester, I met with the chair of the program and I said, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing this. I could see this being something I'd like to do with my career. Sorry. He said to me, Anthony, that's great that you want to do this, but the reality is we're looking for people with PhDs now. At the time, I only had a master's degree. So with that, I went back to school. I worked through my PhD. And as I was right at the end of my program, I was fortunate enough to get hired at Conestoga College. And when I did get hired, what they were looking for was somebody who had work experience and a doctorate. So I will talk a little more about that. So that's how I ended up getting into the college. And then from there, I've been in that role for the last 6 years now. The last 2 years, I've spent seconded in the research office as the director of the Conestoga Social Innovation Lab.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So for most faculty who are working at a university, the basic breakdown of their jobs is 40% research, 40% teaching, and 20% on service to the institution itself. How does that differ when you're working at a college? Are there many opportunities to conduct research?
So there are opportunities to conduct research at the college, but the format is a little bit different. So the standard kind of starting teaching load at a college would be five, five, and four, but those four are typically done as like half a semester. So you tend to teach 5 classes in the fall, 5 in the winter, and then you'll have 3 or 4 classes that are half a class, and you often share them with someone else, or they'll be truncated classes. So you do get a little bit of vacation in the year. So you're sort of jamming those classes into a 2 month period instead of the typical 4 month period. Now, that being said, the college is much more about structuring it where you get time off to do different activities. So I'm a program coordinator and I typically get some course release for that. If you're someone who's interested in doing research, generally you're going to have a conversation with your chair about that and they provide you some time. So it's not like automatic that you're going to get the time. You tend to have a project in mind to get the research. And the other reality at the college is research release time tends to be purchased through grants. Conestoga College has historically been really good at supporting profs with little grants and chances to build out a much bigger grant. And then once you do that, then there's some college-specific grants that you can apply to. This is the biggest distinction I would make from a university. So at a university, you're typically applying for SSHRC and NSERC grants, and you're competing with other university profs and actually college profs as well. So I've managed to get a couple of SSHRC grants. So I've had an insight development grant. I've got an insight grant right now. And with those grants, it's the same sort of process for a college prof or a university prof. The little distinction there, I would say, is if you're a college prof, you don't have that 40% research time. And those grants aren't looking to give you research time, right? There's sort of this expectation you have the time. So you have to sort of negotiate that with your chair or the research office. Say, hey, I'd like to apply for this grant. If I get it, will you give me some time to work on the project? And at Conestoga College, they've always been really supportive when I've wanted to do that. The other stream that we have at the college, though, is a series of grants that are targeted specifically for college faculty and college research departments. And those grants are very much geared towards working primarily with for-profit organizations, a little bit with the nonprofit sector. And those grants are all about applied research. So, you can do a SSHRC grant and have a very theoretical project. You're not getting anywhere with the college-specific grants if you've got something that's primarily theory. can embed a little bit of theory into the project, but what they really want to see is that you're doing something that's going to have a positive impact on the community. And in particular, there are more grants available for programs that are going to help scale a small business or a medium-sized business into a larger business. There tends to be a significant amount of funding for that. A little bit of the different approach that I would suggest, if you are interested in being a college faculty, you can have your area of research, but it's not like you can go in and say, here's this theory that I want to study, and I'm going to start here and then maybe find some research partners that are aligned with that. I tend to find my approach as a college prof is saying, here's a pretty broad area that I'm interested in. Here's some potential research partners. And I sit down and I have conversations with those partners about what are the problems that they're facing. And then I tend to design a research project that solves that partner's need and also gives me something that is academically interesting as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And how would you describe the students at a college? What are they looking for from their experience? And how do prospective faculty members, and what do prospective faculty members need to know about teaching at a college?
So the first thing I would suggest is that the range of interests from a college student body and the range of backgrounds is much, much wider than you see at a university setting. When you go into a university, and I've taught many times at a university, you tend to see students that have a relatively similar background in terms of their education. Usually you've got students coming out of high school. They tended to do relatively well in their high school courses, and they're now in university and hoping to get their degree done in about 4 years and then probably enter the job market, maybe do a master's. College is much, much more diverse in terms of who attends. So I often have students who are on their second, third career. I've a number of times had students that were 10, 20 years older than I was at the time coming back. Many more international students. I've had international students that often have doctorates from their home country and are now coming and doing this. And usually they don't tell me till a little later in the semester. I've had students at the college who are coming out of high school as well. So you do get that mix. I often find as well, we get students at the college who struggle a little bit in their high school setting, and then something has clicked and they come to the college environment. And these are the students that are really a lot of fun to teach, because they're students that have, struggled academically earlier in their careers, and they come to college and then something clicks with them and they sort of figure it out and their motivation kicks in and they tend to be really successful. So this is also an environment where the students are much more job focused than in a university setting. And I know the students have shifted at the university where they are a little bit more job focused. When you're in a college setting, the students are very much thinking like, how am I going to apply this to the job that I get when I graduate? Which makes a lot of sense because the college is really tailored towards that experience. I talked before a little bit about wanting to have work experience and a PhD. And this is a lot of why that's the case. In the college environment, we're trying to help people set them up to get a job. So you need to understand the academic, you need to understand the theory and be able to bring that into the classroom. But the students are really looking for that practical element as well. And they're going to want examples of things that they're going to do in their careers. And they're going to want some specific skill development that's going to help set them up to be successful in those careers.
Excellent. And finally, what is one thing you think most PhD students don't know but should about working in the college sector?
So I'll go back to what I was just talking about. If you do want to break in as a doctoral student into the college sector, I would encourage you to think about what work experience you have as well. The reason I got hired was that I had over a decade of experience working in the nonprofit sector and in government, as well as that PhD. And colleges are increasingly becoming, the market is saturated. I'm going to say they're increasingly becoming maybe a little bit greedy about this. They're looking for somebody who's got that strong educational experience. They've got a little bit of a research background. They're a great teacher and also has some work experience that they can bring into the classroom. Teaching is the other element that is extremely important in the college setting. The teachers at the college are given substantially more training than a professor would be, and the expectations around teaching are a lot higher. If you're going to want to break into the college, you're probably going to have to teach, just like in the university sector, as an adjunct a little bit. While you're doing that, though, the quality of your teaching evaluations, the quality of the experience that students have in the classroom is going to dictate how likely you are to be hired as a full-time faculty member. One of the things you can do as part of that process, and I encourage you to do that, is almost all colleges have a really strong teaching and learning department. And that department will go out and they'll conduct evaluations of you in the classroom and give you feedback. They'll offer training programs. At Conestoga College, there's some mandatory training that we offer. It's excellent. Some of the best training that I've ever done. I've done a lot of teaching training over the years. Came out of those first 5 classes that I had to do at Conestoga College. What they do at the college is they actually pull the best professors at teaching out of the classroom and they bring them into the teaching and learning office and they have them teach professors how to become effective teachers. So they really, at the college, we are looking for, I would say probably first, great teachers and great teachers that can translate work experience and research experience into the classroom in a way that can help students succeed in a job. And that's really kind of the focus of the college. Research is still seen as important, but it tends to be a little bit more applied in nature. It tends to be about focused on solving community problems, which sort of ties into that theme, right? Because if you're working in applied research, you're solving community problems, you're able to, again, bring that experience back into the classroom in a very practical way for the students.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Zach.